Okay, so it's 7 p.m. I'd like to call to order the special meeting of the Beverly City Council on Tuesday, July 14th, 2020. Ms. Kent, would you please call the roll?
Ames,
Yes, here.
Feldman,
Here.
Flaherty, Flowers,
Here.
Frady's,
Here.
Hausman, Rand,
Here?
and Rotundo.
Ms. Kent, I did not hear my name called, but this is Councilor Houseman, and I am here.
Okay, thank you. Council Flaherty's, you're not out there, are you? Oh, you're not
Yes.
here. Okay. I didn't hear you.
Thank you, Ms. Kent. And I hear that I'm supposed to read a script now. Let's see if I can do this at the right timing. So as a preliminary matter, this is Estelle Rand, Vice President of the Beverly City Council. Before the beginning of the meeting, I would like to announce that this meeting is being recorded by the City of Beverly and live streamed by BevCam on both Channel 99 and via BevCam's YouTube channel. I am confirming that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. Maybe nod, thumbs up. And now an introduction to the remote meeting. Good evening. This open meeting of the Beverly City Council is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12, 2020, due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of COVID-19. In order to mitigate the transmission of the virus, we've been advised and directed by the Commonwealth to suspend public gatherings. And as such, the governor's order suspended the requirement of open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. Further, all members of public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The order allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely so long as adequate alternative public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting does not have public participation, though I may ask the council to suspend the rules for some public comment around the resolution later in the meeting. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and televised live and that some attendees are participating by video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that other participants or viewers may be able to see and hear you, and anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. You have the option to turn off your video if you are participating via computer. All participants should keep their microphones or phones muted, please, unless recognized by me to reduce background noise and feedback. Please wait until the person speaking has finished before speaking to clearly hear all participants. In addition, because of the remote meeting, I'm going to read Rule 22 of the Rules and Regulations of the Beverly City Council. Rule 22, all subcommittees of the council shall cause records to be kept of their proceedings. They shall report by ordinance, order, or resolve unless otherwise provided by law. No subcommittee shall act by separate consultation, and no report of as a body shall be received unless agreed and subcommittee actually notified and assembled for the purpose in hand, and signed by a majority of the councilors of the subcommittee. Every subcommittee to which any subject may be referred shall report thereon as soon as possible after full consideration thereof and a vote thereon. However, if the council may by majority vote under any matter pending before subcommittee to be acted upon the subcommittee at its next meeting and or to be forthwith returned to full council. So what that means is we can now take a roll call vote to agree to vote committee work back to the full council so we can vote matters out on the floor tonight. So Ms. Kent, would you please do a roll call?
Ames, Feldman,
Yeah.
Flaherty,
Yes.
Flowers,
Yes.
Frady's,
Yes.
Hausman,
Yes.
Rotundo,
Yes.
and Rand.
Yes, thank you. I can see why you one might not look forward to reading that every meeting. It's a bit like the safety instructions on the airplane before you take off.
Yeah.
So,
Council.
yeah. And now, please, Councillor Houseman, if you would lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Certainly, Council Vice President.
Thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
To the
of the
flag
United
of the
States
United States of
of
America,
America and to the republic
to the republic,
for which it stands,
and
one
one
nation,
nation,
under God,
under God.
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Councillor Houseman. So we're going to go directly to reports from committees. And after we manage the reports from the committees, we'll go into our resolution. Our committee work is very light tonight, thankfully. So we'll save the bulk of our meeting for discussion around the resolution in front of us. So Ms. Kent, would you please help us with reports from committees?
Sure. Order number 155. Dear Honorable City Council, I hereby reappoint, subject to the review and recommendation, the following citizens to serve on the Conservation Commission. Ms. Christine Bertoni at 62 Hot Street and Mr. Rick Grandoni at 58 Natune Street. This terms are to be until June 30th, 2023. Sincerely yours, Michael P. Cahill, Mayor. And this has come out of Legal Affairs.
Thank you. I would accept the motion to approve order number 155.
So moved.
So moved. Second.
And a roll call, please.
Ames,
Yes.
Feldman,
Yes.
Flaherty,
Yes.
Flowers,
Yes.
Brady,
Yes.
Houseman,
Yes.
Rotundo,
Yes.
and Rand.
Yes, thank you. So now what I'd like to do is ask Councillor Flowers, please, to help us in introducing the resolution that we received last night. And I guess just to lay things out, how I think this will work best is to have a small introduction about the resolution, in the resolution in support of declaring racism a public health issue in Beverly. And then I'd like to give councilors an opportunity to ask questions about the resolution or share their comments about the resolution. I think we're all, as a community and as a council, we're in a process of learning and unlearning what it means to become a truly anti-racist community. And so I know there's been some concern that in seeing the council having these types of discussions publicly, and typically the council doesn't engage in kind of philosophical discussion, but this resolution leaves a little bit of space, I think, for all of us to either make a comment or ask a question about the resolution. After that, Councillor Flowers will read the resolution, and if there is an appetite for it, I would ask the council to possibly take a vote on suspending the rules to allow public comment. If there are some people with us tonight who would like to share their comments about the resolution. And if that does happen, please keep in your mind that that would be a limited time to 3 to 5 minutes. Okay, so Councillor Flowers, would you like to please tell us a little bit more about this resolution? And I'm sure you'll also address the work that we've done here and the inspiration that how this came to us, especially with the work we've collaborated with on Esther Nagoto.
Thank you very much, Madam Vice President.
Yes, so this resolution that's before the council tonight is a resolution in support of the city of Beverly, and that would be our mayor and our Department of Health, declaring racism as a public health issue. And as Vice President Rand just alluded to, in conversations that I've been in and that Councilor Rand has been in, and some others too, President Guanci, also with Esther Ngoto, who is a wonderful member of our community. Many of you may know her. She ran for at-large city council, so her name is, I'm sure, familiar to many folks. But Esther has been, for me, part of helping me to learn and to grow and to question and to recommit myself to work that I think I've known I always needed to be about. But as a white person in America, sometimes it's easy I'll speak for only myself. It's sometimes easy to forget how much it means digging in every single day to learning about what it is to be actively anti-racist. I think about the work of Professor Ibram Kendi, who says there's nothing between racism and anti-racism, which I think our Black and brown neighbors and friends in America are not surprised to hear that. I think for myself, it's easy sometimes for me to think that there's sort of this in-between space where I believe I'm not being actively racist, and yet if I'm not working to be actively anti-racist, then all that's left is this systemic racism that's woven into the fabric of our society. And so this move by many communities to declare racism a public health issue, I looked in Massachusetts so far. This kind of declaration has been made in Boston, Chicopee, Everett, Framingham, Holyoke, Medford, Somerville, and Springfield. If I missed a community out there, I'll apologize to them, and I'll certainly welcome counselors correcting me if I've missed someone who's already done this work. Supporting this work, this resolution is a way, if we so choose, to support and recognize work that's being done by the mayor and our Department of Health. It's being done right now. I know they're in process of talking about this declaration to talk about the impacts that systemic racism, indeed 400 years of systemic racism, has had on our neighbors who are Black, Indigenous, and persons of color, and to recognize a reality that's been documented by the National Academy of Medicine and the American Bar Association, that the reality is that systemic racism has impacts on the health of our neighbors. And so this would be a way to direct attention, public health support, and community efforts to learning about and addressing this ongoing public health issue. And for us in Beverly, as a city, to do better. This resolution, if it adopted tonight by the council, does not itself make that declaration. That would come from our mayor and our Department of Health. But should the council vote to approve the resolution tonight, it would be a way for the council in the fabric and the system of our city to have a voice in support of that work being done by our mayor and our Department of Health. And I did some of those communities that I read to you. There's been different mechanisms by which this has happened, these declarations have been made, but the vast majority of the communities that I read tonight, it has been that their mayor or mayor and board of health together have made the declaration, and in many cases, city councils have also used space to affirm that. In a few cases, the case I think of Medford and Chicopee, it was the city councils that themselves made the declaration. But here in Beverly, our mayor is already working on a declaration. So if we choose to adopt this would be the city council's opportunity to have a voice in support. So I'll stop there, and thank you very much, Madam Vice President.
Thank you, Councilor Flowers. It's a pleasure working with you and partnering with you on things like this and anything else that we do. So you make it look easy, and I really appreciate that introduction. I do want to also just make the distinction that this is in support of declaring racism as a public health issue and not a public health crisis. And I think that Ms. Ngoto really brought that to the front of my mind as an important distinction, just to keep in mind that a health issue is ongoing. A crisis sort of seems like a moment in time that can be addressed kind of quickly. And I think that distinction is important. So at this time, I'd like to open it up to the council. If you would just use the chat and let me know if you'd like to make a comment or ask a question. I think it's important that this is a space for asking questions as well. Councilor Feldman, please.
Thank you. And thank you so much for bringing this resolution forward. I really have wanted to be a part and show my support of this work that needs to be ongoing in our community. And I wanted to make sure in terms of I understand that this is our statement of support and that this would have to be come by way of the mayor and the Board of Health. And I was hoping to just get, I think that I am clear on this, but you know, I'm wary of like making statements and resolutions that are a lot of words and not actions. And I'm of the mindset that a support and a resolution like this is the vehicle to which we get the ball rolling for actual concrete actions and like the opportunity to seek out grants and funding. And can someone just confirm that this is the first step towards actions and not necessarily just lip service?
Thank you, Councilor Feldman. That is a really great comment to start off with and question to start off with. And yes, what you said is exactly right, that this is a stepping off point to action. And I think just from discussions that I've had with Councilor Flowers and the mayor and also members of our community, what this supporting resolution does, but what ultimately declaring racism as a public health issue does, is give us the kind of the impetus to connect with many different branches of the community, like Beverly Hospital and you know, the Housing Authority, really connecting with different branches in order to have systemic racism at the front of our minds as a public health problem. So I think it's a distinction that allows us to take significant action and motivates our sort of the underlying course of action, if that makes sense. Councilor Flowers, did you have any thoughts to add to Councilor Feldman's comment or question?
Thank you. I think I also appreciate Councilor Feldman. I appreciate your statement, and I think you're right, and it's important always, but maybe particularly at this moment in history, that we're not only using words, that we're putting our actions behind our words. And so I don't think it would be an unfair overstatement to just share that the mayor, I think, is in process with the declaration, and one of the reasons that he has not released it yet is because he wants it to have actionable steps in it, and is waiting for Bill Burke, our health director, is on a well-deserved vacation at this moment, as you can. So I think part of the delay just in these two things coming out slightly closer together is that they want to make sure that the actions included are actions that Beverly can follow through on and have them be actionable for just the reasons you're saying. I think that's fair to say.
Thank you, Councilor Flowers. That was helpful. I kind of left out that piece of what the mayor had been working on, so thanks for filling that in. Councilor Rotundo has a comment or a question.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. First, I just want to say thank you, Councilor Rand and Councilor Flowers, for the work of starting this whole process. And I know Mayor Cahill started the whole diversity inclusion initiative committee to really delve into whole systematic racism. So I want to also recognize what he's been doing. I kind of want to restate what Councilor Feldman had said in regards to, we present this resolution, we've presented many resolutions, and I just want to make sure, as she has stated, that it's not merely words, but really our actions that we as a council and as a community, we really delve into. Really identifying areas within the community, within the Black and colored community, where we find that there is a systematic health issues due to the racism and all that. So I hope we do really, really take these words to heart. We're serious about it. We've really read this resolution. I know Council Flowers has made a couple of footnotes on it, which was interestingly enough to read those and really get an idea of it. And I've made it abundantly clear to you, Council Rand Flowers, that, I came this with an open mind and, with ignorance and to really get a better understanding. And I've reached out to other members of the community. So I just really hope that as a community and as a council, that if we, go forward with this resolution, that we actually put our actions where our words are. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Rotundo, and I appreciate you being honest about your process of learning about, all of these different steps that we've started to take. I think that's really helpful to hear for our community and just for our council. Councilor Houseman has a question or comment.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. Yeah, I would certainly echo the comments already made by our colleagues, Councilor Feldman and Rotundo, in terms of wanting the council to move well beyond simply a statement of intention and resolution, as this resolution does. And I hope that, and perhaps I have sort of a couple things. One is a question, which is, I understand that there are discussions taking place, and I wonder, although there may be 9 of us on the council, whether there is not some vehicle or some intention for a vehicle in which the rest of us who are supportive of this effort can be included. Because right now, so far, not all of us are. And personally, I find that somewhat frustrating. While I'm very much in a mode of listening and learning as well, I think that the ability to do that would certainly be fostered by more opportunities to participate in the conversations that are going on. So that's just one statement, and perhaps you can follow up in a moment, Madam Vice President, on that, or Councilor Flowers. I just want to, as we've gone through the process of thinking about these issues since the killing of Floyd George, I certainly have had an opportunity to do plenty of reflection and reading and thumbing through books on my shelf, and I was really struck when I went back to Why We Can't Wait, a book written by Martin Luther King in 1963, by something near the something that he wrote, which I think bears saying out loud, because I find it so incredibly striking that it was written almost 60 years ago and yet remains so incredibly true today. So this is relatively brief, but I'll just read this. The Negro also had to recognize that 100 years after emancipation, he lived on a lonely island of economic insecurity in the midst of a vast ocean of material prosperity. Negroes are still at the bottom of the economic ladder. They live within 2 concentric circles of segregation. One imprisons them on the basis of color, while the other confines them within a separate culture of poverty. The average Negro is born into want and deprivation. When you think about where we are today, and you think of that these words were written 57 years ago, nearly 60 years ago, it's just incredibly striking. How far we still have yet to go, and how long the struggle to overcome these kinds of aspects of the original sin of our Constitution and our founding of our country still remain with us. So I strongly support the resolution, commend the fact that it was brought forward, and look forward to voting in favor of it. Having said that, I would like to ask both you, Madam Vice President and Councilor Flowers, to maybe address my first comment about inclusive participation by those of us on the council who have not yet been part of the process.
Thank you, Councilor Houseman. I really appreciate your question and also your comments and recognition of the last 400 years of struggle of people of color. So I wanted to just take a moment to address your first comment and to say that there is a lot happening in different small groups all around the city. I think the good news is that there's a lot of momentum right now, and conversations that are happening across kind of committees and outside of committees. One of the things, actually, I see Joan Emerald is here on this call or somewhere on this call. I actually just was speaking about with Joan Emerald the other day about the need for kind of a dynamic landing page on the city website that just highlights all of the different anti-racist work that's happening right now, because there is a lot going on, and it's not all happening within the Human Rights Committee. It's happening in different branches. So I do recommend the Human Rights Committee as a good base for being connected to this work. And I know they meet, I believe it's the first Thursday of the month. But you can always find out more about that on the city website. And I think that the good news is that you want to be involved, and all of us want to be more involved. And I think we just need to find better ways of connecting the different conversations that are happening. Councilor Flowers, did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
I think that you pretty much summarized it really well. So thank you.
Madam Vice President, if I may.
Sure.
One meeting a month for the Human Rights Committee is important, and I look forward to attending and participating. But I guess let me take the opportunity of speaking now to the 27 people who are attending to say that I would welcome them reaching out to me to have conversations with me on this subject, so that I don't have to wait, and I'm not limited to the Human Rights Committee meeting to engage in these kinds of important conversations. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, I can understand that sense of feeling limited, and I think, what I'm hearing is that you have energy and motivation to take more action. So I think we can connect outside of the meeting to talk more about ways to engage like that if you'd like.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Councilor Ames.
Thank you very much, Madam Vice President. And I appreciate you, Councilor Flowers, and everyone on this call doing all this wonderful and very important work. I have a couple of questions, but I would also echo Councilor Houseman's comments, and I would say that as someone who represents a part of the city, that I think that the communication is really important so that we can hopefully have these conversations together with a broader audience so that we can all work together in the same direction a little more easily in the future. So the first question that I have is I would like to understand why the focus, how this came about in terms of the focus on health, and what was the driver here? because I did not quite exactly understand. Health is very important, but for me, I think, I would just like to know to start there, to understand from where you're coming. Thank you.
Great question, Counselor Ames. And I think, so I'm going to ask for some help with this question from Counselor Flowers, but first I'd also like to just tackle like one piece of that answer the way I understand the value of declaring racism as a public health issue. And I think this is just one tiny little example that at a very cellular level, racism is affecting people of color. So when I say cellular, I mean actual body cells. The level of stress that a person of color feels and by being discriminated against daily and generation after generation after generation has led to health problems that are not being properly addressed because our health system is founded on a racist system, and it's not addressing, it's not expanding and becoming inclusive enough to actually meet the needs of people of color. So I think, I know that sounds a bit philosophical, but I think if you really think about even racism on a cellular level, that it actually is a physical health issue. Maybe for a less philosophical explanation, Counselor Flowers, would you like to kind of talk about some of the points that led to this declaration?
Sure, thank you. And thank you. Just go back and forth. Thank you. Thank you, Counselor Ames, for your question as well. So I think Counselor Rand makes a really good and I think important point about the way that systemic racism and that the dumping of cortisol into our systems. You know, we live under stress. Cortisol is dumped into our systems, and I think what we're learning is that for people in our country who live with racism in its reality every single day, that means living with that. You know, think how our bodies feel when we know that we're being threatened, that fight or flight moment, and how that affects us. And so I think what's hard, again, I'm just speaking for myself, but what I understand from my friends who are people of color, but what I have not myself experienced. So what I believe and center of their experience, despite it not being mine, is that fight or flight, that moment that I experience sometimes, they're living with that heightened sense always. And so I think what Counselor Rand is getting at. But I wanted to share that part of the impetus for this came from, as Vice President Rand shared, our conversations with Ms. Ngoto, who really talked with us quite compellingly about the effects of systemic racism on health in terms of, I think, what we would call social determinants of health, right? So it's health as we sort of first think of it, which are the things we just talked about in our bodies, but these social determinants of health that are, our education, access to education, that contributes to our health and our well-being. Transportation, employment, access to food. I think of many people in our country who live in what people call food deserts, but where it's much harder to get access to the kinds of foods that the Beverly Farmers Market brings into Beverly, for example. I think about access to high quality health care for people of color. It can often be harder based on place where they live, insurance coverage, all kinds of reasons. And all these things are woven together, right? But so access to healthcare itself, housing, and public safety. And so I think in talking with Ms. Ngoto, it caused me to go and do more research and more learning about the way that all of these things are tied together and contribute to health in ways that, in a broad way, that I had not been thinking about in terms of health. I think the other thing is that right now in our country, this the COVID pandemic has in many ways shined a bright light. I think we've seen it shine a bright light on a lot of things, systems that perhaps they don't work as well as we would wish that they would. And I think it's also shined a bright light on these disparities in health access and healthcare for people of color in our country. We see COVID disproportionately affecting and sickening and killing Black and Brown Americans. So I think it's been front of mind for me based on both my community conversations with folks, but I think also based on what we're seeing from COVID across the country.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you,
there.
Counselor. I really
Thank you.
appreciate that. I guess, we're 9 individuals on this council, and I tend to lead with doing and try to think about what are the most immediate things that we as a community can actually do to have an effect, to have as quick a result as possible. And so I wanted to understand that, and I agree with what you have said, and I appreciate that. I mean, for me, when I look at this, I think about the role of city government in our lives in Beverly and what that means to us. So whether that is how we educate children or adults, how we address the achievement gap, homelessness, who the city employs, how people are hired, how people who are in trouble with the law or just in trouble socially, they have just pain in their heart, how we directly deal with them, and just how the budget dollars we spend affect all of this, from whether it is the fire department, certainly the police department, conversations surrounding this $30 million police station that we're building, and to have some really thoughtful conversations to make sure that we're building a building that works for the next 20 years and not the last. So I appreciate this health piece of it, and I personally really look forward with engaging with that list that I sort of threw off the top of my head, because just that little practical piece of me, those are the parts of the work that I think will immediately affect people's lives. And then the one last thing, and I'd have to go back and read it again, but I think basic, especially to a city, is the acknowledgement of our power to ensure people's rights across the board, and to protect them, and to value them, and to hold them high wherever possible. And I think those are the local things. That's why I'm one of the 9. That's why I fought last year to get here. And I just hope in your vision, because kind of like Councillor Houseman said, I don't understand your big vision moving forward, but that I hope that these are the conversations that you're talking about. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ames. And Councillor Paredes has a comment or a question.
Thank you, Madam Vice President, and you run a nice meeting. We don't really need the other guy. But anyway, at first blush, when this came out last night, I was too struck by the public health issue. I thought that was pretty radical. But I'm glad we were given 24 hours to really study this, because there's numerous articles about it, but guess what? Numerous articles can appear on either side, but it was helpful to at least start the basis of the understanding. And then I saw all the cities and towns across the nation that are supporting this, and it was pretty impressive. And then when Councilor Flowers just talked about our esteemed cities and towns in the Commonwealth, that's very helpful because we do look to see what others are doing on many matters. But what really cemented it for me was reading a lot of these journals of medicine, for instance, New England Journal of Medicine, the Harvard Review, Mayo Clinic, things that I'm very familiar with through my ALS research and endeavors that we have done. So when they too identify and really call out why it is a public health issue, it is obvious. So I will support this as well. Thank you so much for bringing this up.
Thank you, Councilor Paredes, and thank you also for being honest about your process with understanding what this declaration is, why it's needed. Councilor Flaherty.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. And I want to thank you for bringing this to attention, also with Council Flowers, but also other members of the community who have brought this forward, like Esther, who is passionate, not only in the past 6 months, but for the past few years that she has brought this issue up. I do want to play a little devil's advocate a little bit. It's interesting trying to educate myself on this and trying to find out someone who I can talk to, because in all fairness, we have 9 white counselors and a 98% white community. And that's a difficult challenge when you're a minority or a person of color coming into a community of that. And that's real. Racism is real. But the question is too, that there's also not just racism, and unfortunately, as much as we educate people, I think racism will always be here in some way or form, but there's also bigotry. And I think we can't forget the whole education piece. And when we do go forward on something like this, I think we need to kind of educate ourselves, not only of racism, but bigotry and other forms. But I am glad that we didn't vote on last night, because I wanted to kind of have my brother-in-law take a look at this. My brother-in-law grew up in the streets of Philadelphia, educated himself, went to Harvard, and lived in the city of Boston and lived in other areas of the country. He is Black, and I wanted to get his perspective on things. And he doesn't necessarily agree with everything that was in this resolution. There, as Councilor Frady says, there's always 2 sides to take a look at things. And he had a difficult beginning, but he sees it a little differently. And I think going forward, as much as we want to have tolerance, I think we need to talk about tolerance on the other side as well. So when somebody does come of color that might disagree or have different perspectives, I think we need to take a look at that, especially as white Americans, and there are people of color in our community. But if there's other sides of that, I think we need to take a look at that. And that was kind of interesting perspective from my brother-in-law, who I've known for most of my life. And it was really interesting, educating to listen what his perspective was, and not necessarily everything on this resolution from his perspective. It's a little different take. And I think we need to kind of, when we're going into something like this, which is so important, and he understands obviously the racism, and he's just wanted us in the city of Beverly of 98% white, 9 white councilors to kind of take a perspective of looking at both sides of the issue and being tolerant. So I just wanted to pass that message on from him as we move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Flaherty, and thank you for sharing with us that you appreciated the time to do research and connect with people of color in your life, and to have a real conversation about this declaration. I think that is part of like your own personal education, and now as a city councilor, you're bringing that to the public, to the public realm, right, in this conversation. I do want to just say, as a comment to your comment, that I envision a world without racism. And I think I have to, and I will always work for that and hope for that. So I'd like to also say that our world is becoming more diverse and not less diverse. So that's just my own. I guess that's the
Absolutely.
luxury of running the meeting. I get to make a comment on everyone's comments. So
Very well
thank
said.
you. Thank you. Are there any other comments or questions from counselors? I guess we've heard from everyone. What I'd like to do now is to read the resolution, and after the resolution, I guess in the meantime, if you are a member of the public participating in this meeting or present for this meeting, normally what you would do is to speak at a council meeting, you would sign up before the meeting if you would like to speak for 3 to 5 minutes. I think this is a good opportunity if there is an appetite from the public present to share a comment, a very brief comment, then please think about that while you're listening to the resolution. And if there's appetite after we hear the resolution, I will ask for a suspension of the rules to allow for public comment. In that case, I would ask if you can, if you would like to make a comment, what you would do if you're a member of the public is to please type in the chat me, M-E. Okay, so first you have a few minutes to think about that as an option. First, I would like to have Councillor Flowers please read the resolution in support of declaring racism a public health issue in Beverly, Massachusetts.
Thank you. And Vice President Rand, if it's okay before I read it, there was just one or two thoughts I wanted to share, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
Thank you. I just wanted to first just say thank you to all my fellow council colleagues for this conversation. I think, as Vice President Rand alluded to at the beginning, because of the structure of our meetings in some cases and because of the way that things get on our agenda, we don't often or always have time to have these kinds of conversations together. And because of open meeting law, we know we can't really have these conversations all together off the record, right? So I just want to say that I really appreciate, and I've been listening to everything that you all shared, and I'm wishing that we were actually sitting in the, I wish this a lot, but I'm wishing we could be sitting in the council chambers tonight so that we could actually be together having this conversation, because I think there's such value in that, and I'll be looking forward to when we can be. And I hope this won't be our last chance to have these conversations. I think it's very fair to say it won't be. I know I heard many councilors asking for more ways that we could have these conversations. And I think it's not inappropriate for me to say, I know Leah Jones is on this call, so I saw her pop up on my screen at one point, but one thing I do know, the Human Rights Committee is in process of working with the city to establish some community trainings on racism and anti-racism work as well. And then I think the idea is that those would blossom into more community conversations. So I think for all of us who are looking for those ways to be more involved in part of conversations and to do the work, I think there will be opportunities. I hope there will be many more opportunities. I wanted to say, Councillor Ames, I think your list of things that you wanted to get to work on, I agree. And as I was listening to your list, I was thinking you were hitting all of those, what I called the social determinants of health. But I think you're exactly kind of in that realm of what are the concrete action steps that we take across all measures to help make sure that our community is one where people can feel seen and valued and heard and safe. And so I look forward to working with you on those things. I also wanted to just mention my appreciation for everybody who said that they came to this did more learning. Councillor Rotundo, your comment stood out to me. And what I wanted to say to all of us is I'm still learning too. And I think it's important for us to be able to acknowledge that. And even more, I know that in my learning, because I haven't borne the brunt of racism, I know that I'm also going to make mistakes. I will say the wrong thing. I will misspeak. I will misstep in my efforts to try to do the right thing or to learn or to be an active anti-racist ally and accomplice to our friends and neighbors of color in our community. And so I guess I want to say that I think it's fair to say probably all of us will. And so I'm trying to work on, and I hope we can all together work on when we are corrected, when we are called out, when we are educated. I've been thinking a lot about that, and it's, listening and hearing, apologizing, and then digging in to begin again and to keep that learning going. But I just wanted to say that I make no pretense of coming with this all figured out. And I also think it's so important, and I think this has been raised, that as a council of 9 white counselors, we need to be finding ways to elevate and to listen to the voices of community members of color and center their experiences. I've heard people talk about it as sometimes it's important just to know when to pass the microphone. And I think that's going to be part of our ongoing learning as well. Before I read the resolution, I want to just share with you just really quickly, and you're indulging me so much, so thank you, lyrics from a song that actually my 8-year-old was listening to today. And we were in the car and he asked for a group. Some people on this call I know are going to know this group, the Alphabet Rockers. He said, can you put the Alphabet Rockers on? And they have a song on their album. Their album's called The Love. And the song is called Until You're Free. And I found myself, as he was listening, I found myself just really struck by these lyrics. And I think this is so much of what our conversation tonight is grappling with, which is, as 9 white city councilors, how do we commit ourselves every day to this work of listening and learning? So I just want to read you just the beginning of what he had asked for that stood out to me. The lyrics go like this: until you're free, I'll be learning about your life and rights, looking out for what you need, working to adjust my sight. See, until you're free, I'll be stepping up physically, putting focus on the real pick, taking responsibility. I'm not trying to live in a world that wants to remove you. I'm trying to be in a place with space to include you. We're out here playing by rules that muffle the truth, which eventually becomes soundproof. And then I'm just going to skip. There's like a little bridge that says, I'm not free until you're free, and we will be louder and stronger together. And that led me to think of a favorite quote of mine, and then I will stop and read the resolution. But it's a quote from an Australian Aboriginal activist and also artist named Lilla Watson. And she said, if you've come here to help me, you are wasting your time. But if you've come here because your liberation is bound up with mine, then let us work together. Because I think one of the things that I also think is important for us to keep front of mind, and I guess again I'll say I'm trying to keep it front of mind, is what I think Councillor Flaherty and others alluded to, which is it's important for us, for me as a white leader, to remember that what I'm called to do is not just step in with what I think is the right answer, but to recognize that my freedom, my liberation is bound up in that of everybody else, of every person of color in this community, and that working together and centering their voices and learning, and then using my voice to help elevate their voices and vice versa. That's where I think we can do some really amazing work together as a community. So I will stop there and thank you for indulging me, and I will read the resolution. A resolution in support of declaring racism a public health issue in Beverly, Massachusetts, submitted by Ward 2 Councillor Estelle Rand and at-large Councillor Julie Flowers. Whereas racism is rooted in the foundation of America and woven into all of the systems and structures in our society, beginning with chattel slavery in 1619, much of the Black experience in America has been endured under slavery and/or racist Jim Crow laws, which allowed preferential opportunities for white Americans while subjecting people of color to hardships and disadvantages in every area of life. And whereas health disparities have existed in America for more than 400 years, the COVID-19 pandemic is but the latest example of such disparity and is shining a stark light upon the long-running racial divide in areas of health, as COVID-19 is killing Black Americans at 2.4 times the rate of white Americans, as BIPOC, which is Black, Indigenous, and people of color communities, are impacted at disproportionate rates by COVID-19, and as Black Americans are disproportionately suffering long-term impacts from COVID-19 due to long-standing unaddressed health disparities, as well as systemic racism and other socioeconomic inequities. And whereas racism negatively impacts the lives of BIPOC residents of the city of Beverly, just as it does for residents of every city and town across our state and in our nation, as racism causes disproportionately higher rates of homelessness, incarceration, and economic hardships for BIPOC residents. Racism can be seen across systemic, institutional, and interpersonal levels, all operating over the course of time and across generations. And whereas the negative repercussions of historical racism can be seen woven into institutions, including but not limited to discriminatory lending practices of the 20th century known as redlining, as well as predatory lending practices of the early 2000s that effectively work to use zoning and housing access to uphold systemic racism and decrease access to social, educational, and structural support and equity for BIPOC Americans. And whereas the impact of systemic racism on health and well-being are well documented for Black and POC Americans, and can be found in areas including but not limited to maternal mortality, infant mortality, heart disease, diabetes, cancer, lack of access to healthcare providers, gun violence, and police violence. Indeed, the National Academy of Medicine found that, quote, racial and ethnic minorities receive lower quality healthcare than white people, even when insurance status, income, age, and severity of conditions are comparable. And whereas the privilege that white Americans experience inhibits them from fully understanding how racism impacts BIPOC people in America. For example, seemingly mundane tasks like driving one's car, walking through neighborhoods, going for a run, going birding, or just going to a park come with risks to BIPOC Americans that are not experienced by others. In addition, for our BIPOC residents, life events such as getting a job, purchasing a home, buying a car, or simply raising a family come with barriers that white Americans do not experience. And whereas the members of the Beverly City Council are in support of ongoing work by our mayor and Department of Health to declare racism a public health issue in Beverly, and to commit as a community to engage in the real and needed systemic work to address and improve this reality. And whereas this council urges every sector of our society to declare these disparities as a public health issue and immediately take steps to address, fund, and support areas that strategically reduce the long-term impact of the social determinants of health for at-risk communities. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Beverly City Council supports the effort to declare racism as an ongoing public health issue in the city of Beverly, and to commit our full attention to improving the quality of life and health of our minority residents, and commits to lend our support to efforts by the city of Beverly to honestly and directly address minority health inequities, and efforts to engage in a systemic, data-driven focus on poverty, economic mobility, and other factors that impact the social determinants of health, including but not limited to education, transportation, employment, food access, health behaviors, socioeconomic status, environmental exposure, access to health services, housing, and public safety.
Thank you, Councilor Flowers. Thank you to the full council for the discussion we've had. And I guess before we vote to adopt this resolution, I would like to also make a comment that even if we just as a council take that last, now therefore be it resolved, and this is sort of directed towards counselors who are sort of asking to be more involved in the action of this anti-racism work. If you look at that last paragraph and consider it a to-do list, and do your research on how to tackle those things, I am very assured that there will be no lack of action that you could be involved in. So thank you for laying that all out for us. Ms. Kent, can I ask you the proper process now is for us to vote to adopt this resolution. Is that correct?
Yep.
Okay. So I would accept a motion. Oh, I'm sorry. Can you repeat that, Ms. Kent?
I think Council Flaherty may want to say something.
Councilor Flaherty.
Yes, Madam Vice President, did you want to have public comment before this, or did you want to do it afterwards?
I would like to adopt the resolution, and then we'll take a vote to allow public comment, because there does seem to be some appetite for that.
All right, sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you. I would accept a motion to adopt the resolution in support of declaring racism a public health issue in Beverly.
So moved.
Second.
And Ms. Kent, a roll call, please.
Ames,
Yes.
Feldman,
Yes.
Flaherty,
Yes.
Flowers,
Yes.
Brady,
Yes.
Houseman,
Yes.
Rotundo,
Yes.
and Rand.
Yes, thank you. I would now accept a motion from the council to suspend the rules to allow public comment.
So moved.
Second.
And a roll call, please.
Ames,
Yes.
Feldman,
Yes.
Flaherty,
Yes.
Brady's,
Yes.
Houseman,
Yes.
Rotundo,
Yes.
and Rand.
Yes. Before I go to the list of people who have expressed an interest in speaking, I would respectfully just like to ask if Ms. Ngoto is still on the call, if you are interested at all in sharing a public comment or question with us, since you are the inspiration and the educator that led us to this point. And if you, okay, excellent. All right, Esther, you have the floor. We can't hear you yet.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you now.
All right. Good evening. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I see there are a lot of people who would like to talk, but I just want to explain why racism is a public health problem. And I am assuming that everybody knows that housing, education, employment are social determinants of health. So all those are driven by the racism is the force that drives all those. And I'm going to use some information that I got from a website. So assume that Jason is a Black boy. So just listen. I know I speak with an accent, but just try. So Jason is a Black boy. So this is happening between two people who are talking to each other. And the question is, why is Jason in hospital? Because he has a bad infection in his leg. But why does he have an infection? Because he had a cut on his leg and it got infected. But why does he have a cut on his leg? Because he was playing in the junkyard next to his apartment building, and there was some sharp, jagged steel there that he fell on. But why was he playing in a junkyard? Because his neighborhood is kind of run down. A lot of kids play there, and there is no one to supervise them. But why does he live in that neighborhood? Because his parents cannot afford a nicer place to live. But why can't his parents afford a nicer place to live? Because his dad is unemployed and his mom is sick. But why is his dad unemployed? Because he does not have much education and he can't find a job. But why? So you keep asking why, the answer is racism. Thank you.
Thank you, Esther. And one of the things that I really love about how you're able to teach me personally is that you always have a story to highlight the question and the answer. And I think that's a really meaningful way to learn. So thank you for that. And thank you for the inspiration to take this action tonight. I see there are a couple of people who would like to share a comment or a question. I'll go first to Carol Rain, please.
Okay, now I think I'm unmuted. So I want to say
I can hear you.
I want to say two things. First, I want to express how moved I have been to hear this resolution and how proud I am that you've all voted for it. For about 5 years, I've been part of a New England committee called Challenging White Supremacy. And we've spent a lot of time looking at why this exists and what can we do about it. So when I looked for something that I remembered seeing, I want to just read you a couple of sentences. This is from a couple of years ago, from April of 2018, from the New York Times Magazine. The cover story says, "Why are Black mothers and babies in the United States dying at more than double the rate of white mothers and babies? The answer has everything to do with the lived experience of being a Black woman in America." It was in the New York Times. It represented a huge amount of research. But more people now understand, because of COVID, the difference that being Black makes in a person's health. So this resolution, I just can't even express how moved I am and how proud I am that you've all voted for it. So thank you.
Thank you, Carol, and I'm with you. I also feel very moved that this council brought this forward, and thank you for the work that you've been doing. Thanks. Neil Levine was next to make a comment. Thanks, Neil.
Good evening, all. Neil Levine, 36 Thorndike. I want to commend the councilor sponsors and the whole council for both the bringing this resolution forward and your comments this evening. I wanted to make two comments and then a kind of a pledge. The comments would be just to applaud the comprehensive nature. You had a debate about why this comes from public health lens, but it's quite comprehensive in addressing all the social determinants of health, which gives you a much broader lens and a vision and as Councilwoman Rand said, an agenda or to-do list to follow. And I appreciate that was taken on in a robust form and given eloquent expression by the contribution from Esther and Goto about it affects just about every aspect of the Black community's lives and people of color. The second is I appreciated in the wording of the resolution the reference to white privilege. And then, as Councilor Flaherty said, a community that is 98% white, it's the water we swim in. And sometimes we don't even recognize what the differences are that our neighbors of color experience on a daily basis. And that's part of the education that we all need to do. the pledge, it comes in the form of, when I think about, and we all think about the size of systemic racism in our community, that what is it we can do? And I thought Councilwoman Flowers referred to something I'm familiar with, and what do we do in a personal level, in an introspective way? What do we do on an interpersonal way in our relationships? And then what do we do in a systemic way? And I want to thank you all for addressing this systemic issue here. And the pledge is really to hold you all accountable. You pledged to a robust policy response, systemic, data-driven across education, transportation, justice, food security. And I guess the pledge is in 6 months' time to come to a future council meeting and ask you what has been achieved. And I think that's important. I think we rush to resolutions which start the conversation, but all of us need to be focused on those outcomes that really will mean meaningful change for all Beverly's residents. Thank you very much, and congratulations.
Thank you, Neil. And I appreciate you being committed to holding us accountable. I'd like to now let Fred Hobbs speak.
I think Joan was ahead of me.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you for letting me know that. I'm keeping track of the, oh yeah, I see. Joan, please.
Thank you. I am
Thanks,
very honored to be here. You know, we're in the midst of democracy here. It feels democratic. And so I'm a meditation teacher, and meditation is a process of awakening. And this is how I approach democracy. Democracy is a process of awakening, and it requires our engagement. And I see the same thing to be true for racism. The work of racism is a process of awakening. And Tim, Councilor Flaherty, I just want to say, I too, only a few years ago, I said, I believe that racism is always going to be here. And I believe that. And thank you for saying that tonight, because I got to hear what that sounds like. And Councilor Rand, Vice President Rand, I appreciate your responding, taking that up a little bit, because I think we have to believe that things can end, that injustice can end, and that racism can end. You have to kind of maybe raise the bar, you know, to believe that what's possible involves us engaging in it, engaging in this process of awakening. So, you know, I'm very touched that you all have done so much homework, and you had the last 24 hours, which it sounds like you used really well. I would encourage, this is a challenge, to, you know, we can ask family members who are Black, and we can also ask people in our community right here in Beverly who are Black. I'm really surprised there are only 2% people of color. I think they were all on the Zen Center call last night, if that's true. I feel like there are more than 2%, but those are just numbers. That doesn't really matter. I really encourage all of us to get close to a person of color in our community. I have the deep privilege of Esther Godot being, I call her my best friend. I don't know what she calls me. She calls me her sister, and it's a privilege to walk with her. And I want to say, I am not passionate about anti-racist work, about ending racism. I am not passionate about it. It's like calling me passionate for wanting to save a child who's drowning. It has nothing to do with passion. It has everything to do with responding, because that's a human life. So I say that just to say that this is a process we're in, and we're only at the beginning. Tonight, what you've shown me, and you've shown everybody, is that there's political will for this. So let's just keep going strongly, and let's really support each other to keep doing this work that I can assure you is not going to get any easier. So let's please support each other. And I'm just so grateful. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Joan. Thank you for your leadership and friendship. And also, you know, I really appreciate when I get a chance to meditate with you. So thank you. That helps. And it is process. And I think we said at the beginning of the meeting, I don't know if everyone had heard that, but typically the city council doesn't have the opportunity to sort of have broader philosophical discussions. And I think this resolution opened that up a bit. So I appreciate everyone being fully engaged here. And now I think it's Fred Hopp who would like to speak.
Yes, thank you. Councilor Flower and listening would be not thinking about what you want to do. So,
Fred, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but you're breaking up just a little bit.
Swallow your microphone, Fred.
yeah, I think I'll have to go out here. Is that any better?
It is.
Okay. Well, so I want to say what a privilege it was to hear you go through this deliberation and to have this conversation, because as a white man, I'm grappling with the silence, and I feel like duplicit in this oppression. And so it's so good to hear the counselors discuss this so openly and honestly. And I didn't think I could be much prouder about this city than when you recently passed the clean energy bills that you did, the GMA and the 100%. But now as the tsunami of clean energy is happening, this new dream I have is a world without racism. And it was another privilege to be at the city hall today in Lynn, where they had the opportunity to do something bold and they didn't. They were being asked to take some of their 10% that was going to the police department and reallocate that towards public works for ending racism. And they didn't do that. And so I left from there, and then I came to this meeting. And so it's just an honor to watch your deliberation and how you came to this. And it was great to be able to stand there with Joan and Esther, and then to see you do this. And I was at a Green New Deal Zoom conference recently, and Ayanna Pressley said, she quoted Cornel West, and she said, "Justice is what love looks like in public." And that's what I'm seeing tonight, this new form of love, this justice that you're creating. And thanks to Esther for being that spark. And thank you to the council for taking up that fire. And I look forward to working with you all to end racism in this town and beyond. Thank you.
Thank you, Fred. Thanks for your comments. And I really appreciate hearing the word love at a city council meeting. Miss Kezia Johnson would like to speak. Are you still here, Kezia? Okay.
I'm here.
Hi, Kezia.
Hi, everyone. I just wanted to just echo Joan and really everyone else in this meeting. Esther, thank you so much. I think that although it's hard for a white person to understand and really interpret what it means to walk in, a person of color's shoes, is something that we can't expect. But I think that what we can expect is what happened today. And I just want to say how happy and proud I am. It's sort of like this ongoing roller coaster. It's like we take 2 steps forward and then we take 1 back, and then we might take 1 more step and 2 more back. But today, I feel like we took 5 steps. And I just want to say that you know, I had talked about in one of the meetings this place that I wanted myself and my children to feel safe and to feel included. And today I feel even more that place can and will be Beverly. And that's all I wanted to say. Thank you all so much.
Thank you, Kasia. Thank you so much. And I'm so glad to see you back at a city council meeting. You are welcome anytime. And it's my hope that the city council can continue to address racism and take concrete steps towards anti-racism every time we gather. So thank you for your inspiration with us as well. Julia Long, I think, would like to make a comment if I have the order right.
Hi, everyone. Thank you. I'm not going to speak very long. I just wanted to share my gratitude, my deep gratitude to City Council and to Esther and to Kasia for sharing your stories with us and helping us become a deeper place. I also want to just remind all of us here that our children are watching us. And my daughter is just out of shot right now. Here she is. And I just want to, and my son is watching too in his own way. But I just want to make it very, very clear that we are doing this for ourselves. We're doing this for our friends and our neighbors. We are doing this for our children, and we're doing this for future generations. And this is important that we keep asking ourselves these questions and keep having these conversations. So thank you so much for bringing this to the fore.
Thank you, Julia. And I know you're part of the city that's holding us accountable too. So thank you for your effort. And then if I think we're just about wrapping up the comments from the public. Unless I'm mistaken, I think that was it for comments from the public. I do also just want to quickly recognize Leah Jones, the chair of the Human Rights Committee, is here, and she is in full support of this meeting, but did tell me to keep it a city council focus. Are you, Leah, are you still feeling the same way, or would you like to make a comment from the Human Rights Committee?
Just to say, I just want to echo thanks to Esther and Kasia for the work that you do at the city level as city leaders. It's been recognized by the teens with whom you've worked and who you've supported. And I know that there have been lots of people coming to you for more, and you're giving so much, and we recognize that, and we're here to stand with you and walk with you and keep doing this work, and that it's not, I guess I read somewhere, when the dust settles, we'll still be here working and walking. And I just wanted to mention that the training that the city council is looking into, and we've just talked about it because the Human Rights Committee came up with a little bit of money, some seed funding, to collaborate with the city council and other city leaders to do an initial anti-racism training. And I know Councilor Rand will be looping back around with the city council to talk to you about that, but we're excited to bring in some community members, because leadership looks like a lot of different things in the city, and we're really excited about it. So thank you. And thanks for the unanimous yes tonight. And my kids are watching and listening too, in and out. So thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Leah. Thanks for all the work you're doing and your words. I appreciate that. And then I'm going to just turn it back over to Councilor Flowers for one last comment before we wrap up our council meeting for this evening.
Thank you. I also just wanted to take a moment, sort of, I guess, echoing what Leah just said, but I wanted to say thank you to Kasia, who, I think back to that, I think it was our June 1st meeting when Kasia, you spoke to us, and I remember Kasia said to us, please just do anything but nothing. And that has stuck with me. And I'm in a way that's both inspiring and also reminds me of how far we have yet to go, as Councillor Hausman said, because to to be asked as leaders. What a compelling, but also what a revealing ask, that anything but nothing. And so I hope that we will take Keisha's invitation to continue to do that work. And I want to thank Keisha for speaking to us on that day, and then for continuing to, as Leah said, continuing to be a strong voice and city leader. I want to thank Esther also for her leadership and her words. And Councillor Rand mentioned the way that Esther always teaches with a story. And I have remarked to Esther that, in my day job, I'm a preacher. And so I like to think I have a way with words, but Esther has a way with words that I just wish that I could bottle up and take with me, because she teaches me every time that she speaks. And Esther, I want to say thank you to you. And I also want to say thank you because Esther also holds me accountable. She does not let me feel like, taking a step or checking a box is good enough, because it isn't good enough. And I hope that that we'll all continue to be held accountable. Many people on this call tonight are talking about holding us accountable. And I hope that you will, and I hope that we will continue to hold ourselves accountable as leaders. So I just wanted to say thank you. And thank you to all of the young people in our community who are working and have been working so hard right now as well. I think we've seen them organize a community walk, a Black Lives Matter walk. We've seen them raise a Black Lives Matter flag in front of our city hall. We've seen them ignite a petition that we all received. And so I think a thank you to our young people as well, who are calling us to keep learning and to do better and to put our learning into action. And so I just want to say that I'm committed to keeping learning and putting that into action along with all of you. And thank you to Councillor Rand for working on this resolution with me as well. And thanks to all of you, my fellow councillors. Thanks for this conversation. This has been really important, and I hope that it won't be the last time we have these kind of conversations.
Thank you very much, Councillor Flowers. So I really appreciate everyone being fully engaged in this extended discussion that we were allowed to have because of this resolution going forward. I want to just reiterate that I really think as counselors, if we are not sure where to begin to hear some of the words from the meeting tonight, to engage your neighbors, engage with people of color in our community, and use this resolution as a checklist. And, if you don't know where to start, I think keep Keisha's words in your mind, as Councillor Flowers pointed out, and as long as you're not doing nothing, you are starting, and you can have an effect on building Beverly as an inclusive and anti-racist community. So I'm looking forward to continuing this work with everyone in the community and this council. I can't wait to see what we do next, actually. And with that, this is our last scheduled, believe it or not, our last scheduled council meeting of the summer. Is there anyone that has any announcements for that you'd like to share for our before we go on break? Okay, I feel like I'm happy with ending on the note from our robust philosophical discussion, and I would accept a motion to adjourn this meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, Ms. Kent, roll call, please.
Ames?
Yes.
Feldman? Yes. Flaherty?
Yes.
Brady?
Yes.
Houseman?
Yes.
Rotundo?
Yes.
And Rand?
Yes.
Oh, and me too, Ms.
This
Kent.
meeting-
I'm also in favor of, I'm also up for adjourning.
Adjourn?
Yeah.
You don't want to be in perpetual city council meetings?
I know, I think I'll be left here just me for the whole summer.
Yeah. Good
Thank
job.
you so much. Yeah, thank you. I really enjoyed that meeting. I appreciate all the work that everyone put into that and the thought and discussions. That was awesome. hopefully we won't see you anytime soon.
Good summer.
Thank
I'll
you.
love you. Good night,
Thanks, everyone. Good
Bye.
work.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.